He held a valid first-class ticket in his hand, paid for by the woman who owned the very airline he was flying. But to the flight attendant, standing at the jet bridge, 17-year-old Marcus looked like a threat, not a passenger. She didn't see a boy excited to visit his mother. She saw a hoodie, a skin color she didn't trust, and an opportunity to flex her power. She thought she could humiliate him, kick him off the flight, and get away with it. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. Because the woman sitting in seat 1A wasn't just any passenger, and she was about to ruin this flight attendant's entire life. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 buzzed with a frantic energy that usually gave Marcus a headache. But today the 17-year-old didn't mind the noise, the rushing tourists, or the smell of stale coffee and floor wax. Today he was flying to London. He adjusted the strap of his worn-out backpack, his fingers brushing against the soft fabric of his grey hoodie. He pulled his headphones down around his neck, checking the digital display on the gate monitor. Flight 882 to Heathrow. Boarding in 10 minutes. Marcus smiled. It had been 6 months since he'd seen his mother, Eleanor. She had been in Europe, overseeing a massive merger for her company, Sterling Global, a conglomerate that had recently acquired a controlling stake in several major logistics and travel firms. She had sent him the ticket electronically with a simple text. "Come home, sweetie. I miss you. Don't worry about the cost, just get the best seat." He looked at the boarding pass on his phone. Zone 1, Seat 2F, First Class. He'd never flown first class before. Usually Eleanor was humble about their wealth, teaching Marcus the value of $1 by making him fly economy or earn his own spending money. But this was a special occasion. Her birthday was in 2 days. Group 1 First Class and Diamond Medallion members, you are welcome to board, the gate agent announced. Marcus stood up. He was tall for his age, 6'1", with a lean, athletic build, honed by years of track and field. He zipped up his hoodie, obscuring the vintage t-shirt underneath, and joined the short line of suits and expensive blazers. The man in front of him, wearing a tailored Italian suit that probably cost more than Marcus's first car, glanced back. His eyes flicked over Marcus's sneakers, his loose jeans, and his hoodie. The man sniffed, clutching his briefcase tighter, and turned away. Marcus was used to it. He kept his expression neutral, stepping up to the scanner when it was his turn. Beep. "Have a nice flight, Mr. Sterling," the gate agent said, without looking up, her eyes glued to her screen. "Thanks," Marcus said softly. He walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting his face. He felt a flutter of excitement. He was going to sleep in a lie-flat bed and maybe get one of those warm cookies his mum told him about. He stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the first-class cabin. "Hold it right there." The voice was sharp like a whip crack. Marcus stopped. Standing in the galley blocking the aisle to first class was the flight attendant. Her name tag read Karen Holloway. She was in her late 40s with hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde rigidity and a smile that didn't reach her cold, scanning eyes. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, polite as always. Eleanor had raised him to be a gentleman, no matter the circumstance. Karen looked him up and down, her lip curling slightly as she took in the hoodie. "You're in the wrong line, sweetie. Economy is to the right. Keep moving, you're blocking the entrance." Marcus blinked, confused. "Oh no, ma'am. I'm in first class. Seat 2F. He held up his phone to show her the QR code. Karen didn't even look at the screen. She scoffed a short, dismissive sound. "I doubt that. Look, I don't have time for pranks or for kids trying to sneak into the premium cabin for a TikTok video. Turn around, go down the other aisle, and find your seat in the back." The passengers behind Marcus were starting to pile up. The man in the Italian suit from earlier was right behind him, checking his Rolex impatiently. "Is there a problem?" the man asked, his voice booming. Just a little confusion. Karen said, her voice suddenly sugary sweet as she addressed the man in the suit. This young man seems to be lost. She turned back to Marcus, her face dropping the mask instantly. Move. Now. Marcus felt the heat rising in his cheeks. He wasn't trying to cause trouble. Ma'am, I promise I'm not sneaking in. Look at the ticket. It says Marcus Sterling Seat 2F. He shoved the phone forward again. This time, Karen swatted his hand away. Don't shove that in my face, she snapped loud enough that heads in the already seated business class section turned. I know a fake ticket when I see one. We get kids like you all the time printing out screenshots to try and steal amenities. It's not a screenshot, it's the airline app. Marcus protested, his voice rising slightly in desperation. Lower your voice, Karen hissed, stepping into his personal space. You are disrupting the boarding process. This is a federal offense. Do you want me to call the captain? Do you want me to call security? Marcus took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. He knew how this looked. A black teenager in a hoodie, arguing with a white flight attendant. He knew the statistics. He knew who would be believed. I just want to sit in my seat, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. If you scan it, you'll see. Karen crossed her arms. I'm not scanning anything. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know who belongs in first class and who belongs in row 45 near the toilets. You don't fit the profile. The profile. The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. What exactly is the profile? Marcus asked, his jaw tightening. People who pay, Karen said icily. People who know how to dress. People who belong. Move it, kid, the man in the suit shouted from behind. Some of us actually have business to get to. Karen smirked, feeling the support of the crowd. You heard the gentleman. I'm going to give you one last chance. Go to economy, find an empty seat and stay there. If I see you in this cabin again, you're off the plane. But I don't have an economy seat, Marcus argued. If I go back there, I'll be taking someone else's spot. Figure it out, Karen said, waving her hand dismissively. Or get off. Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the smug satisfaction in her eyes. She wasn't doing this because she thought he was a safety threat. She was doing this because she wanted to put him in his place. He looked at the line of impatient people behind him. He didn't want to be the reason the flight was delayed. He didn't want to embarrass his mother by getting arrested for causing a disturbance before the plane even took off. Fine, Marcus whispered. He turned right. He walked past the galley down the narrow aisle of the economy section. He felt the eyes of passengers on him. Some looked sympathetic, others looked annoyed. He kept walking until he reached the very back of the plane, near the lavatories. The plane was fully booked. Every seat was taken. He stood there awkwardly, clutching his backpack as the final passengers boarded. The smell of the chemical toilet was strong here. He felt tears prickling the back of his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. He texted his mother. Mum, there's a problem. The attendant won't let me in my seat. She thinks I'm sneaking in. I'm standing in the back. The message didn't deliver. No signal. He was trapped. Back in the front galley, Karen Holloway was adjusting her scarf, feeling a rush of adrenaline. She hated these entitled kids. She felt she had done her duty protecting the sanctity of the first-class cabin. Everything all right, Karen? Asked Sarah, a younger flight attendant who had just come up from the catering truck. Fine, Karen said, pouring a glass of champagne for the man in the Italian suit, who was now comfortably settled in seat 2A, the seat next to where Marcus should have been. Just had to handle some trash trying to float upstream. You know how it is. Sarah frowned. Who was it? Some teenager in a hoodie. probably a drug dealer or a rapper wannabe, claimed he had a ticket for 2F. Sarah's eyes went wide. She looked at her manifest tablet. Karen, 2F is occupied on the manifest by a Marcus Sterling. Yeah, that's the name he gave. Fake ID, fake app. I sent him to the back. Sarah tapped the screen, her face paling. Karen, the last name. Sterling. So, Sterling, as in Sterling Global. The company that just bought the logistics partnership contract with our airline, the company that literally pays for our fuel. Karen paused, the bottle of champagne hovering over the glass. A seed of doubt planted itself in her stomach, but she crushed it immediately. Don't be ridiculous, Karen scoffed. If he was a Sterling, he wouldn't be dressed like a thug. And he certainly wouldn't be traveling alone without an entourage. It's a coincidence. Besides, I know the type. He was lying. I don't know, Karen, Sarah whispered, looking toward the back of the plane. Maybe we should double-check. I said let it go, Karen snapped. I am the lead flight attendant on this bird. My word is final. He sits in the back or he swims to London. Karen turned her back on Sarah and walked into the first-class cabin with her brightest, fakest smile. She approached seat 2F, which was currently empty. More champagne, sir? She asked the man in 2A. Please, the man said. Glad you got rid of that riffraff. Airline standards are really slipping these days. Not on my watch, Karen said, pouring the bubbly liquid. I keep a very clean ship. Meanwhile, in the back of the plane, the engines began to whine as the auxiliary power kicked on. Marcus was still standing. There were no seats. A large man in the last row, wearing a construction vest, looked up at him. Hey, kid, you got to sit down. We're pushing back. I don't have a seat, Marcus said, his voice cracking. She told me to come back here. Just then, Karen's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 882 to London. We are just finishing up our final checks and will be pushing back shortly. Please ensure all carry-on items are stowed and your seatbelts are fastened. She began her walk-through, striding down the aisle like a warden patrolling a prison block. She spotted Marcus standing near the lavatory. She stopped. The smile vanished. Her eyes went dark. I thought I told you to find a seat. She barked loud enough for the back 10 rows to hear. There aren't any, Marcus said, gesturing to the full cabin. The plane is full. Then you shouldn't be on it, Karen said. I gave you a chance. You failed to follow crew instructions. That's it. You're done. She grabbed the interphone handset on the wall near the rear galley. Captain Miller, she said into the receiver, her eyes locked on Marcus with a predatory gleam. We have a situation in the rear. Non-compliant passenger. Refusing to sit, claiming a fake ticket, and now becoming aggressive with the crew. I need him removed. Yes. Call the police. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Aggressive. He hadn't moved an inch. Wait, Marcus pleaded. Please just check the computer. My name is Marcus Sterling. Stop shouting, Karen yelled, playing to the audience. Sir, back away from me. Do not touch me. Marcus held his hands up, showing his palms. I'm not touching you. The passengers were murmuring now. Phones were coming out. People were recording. He didn't touch her, the man in the construction vest said, standing up. Lady, he's just standing there. Sit down, sir, or you'll be removed too, Karen snapped at the witness. She turned back to Marcus. The police are on their way. You're going to jail, kid. You picked the wrong flight attendant to mess with today. Marcus leaned against the bathroom door, closing his eyes. He wasn't going to London. He was going to a cell. And the worst part was he knew his mother was waiting for him on the other side of the ocean, unaware that her son was being treated like a criminal on her own airline. But what Karen didn't know, what nobody on the plane knew yet, was that the plane wasn't pushing back because of Marcus. It was holding at the gate for a VIP late arrival, a connection from a private jet that had just landed on the tarmac, and that VIP was currently walking down the jet bridge, flanked by two assistants looking very eager to see her son. The atmosphere in the economy cabin had turned from annoyed to volatile. The air was thick with tension, the kind that precedes a lightning strike. Karen stood at the head of the aisle near the rear galley, her arms crossed, creating a physical barrier between Marcus and the rest of the passengers. "Stay back," she shouted, though Marcus hadn't moved a muscle. He was still leaning against the lavatory door, his backpack clutched to his chest like a shield. His heart was hammering against his ribs, so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Two Port Authority officers, heavy with tactical gear and grim expressions, stomped down the narrow aisle. They had to turn sideways to pass the beverage cart that Karen had conveniently left out to block the path. The lead officer, whose badge read Officer D. Vance, was a man who looked like he hadn't smiled since the mid-90s. He had a buzz cut and eyes that scanned for threats and found them everywhere. Behind him was a younger, nervous-looking rookie, Officer Miller. "Where is he?" Vance barked, his hand resting instinctively near his belt. Karen pointed a manicured finger at Marcus, pulling a face of exaggerated distress. "Right there, officer. The one in the grey hoodie. He's been aggressive, refusing to follow crew member instructions, and I believe he's intoxicated. He tried to push past me to get to the cockpit earlier." A collective gasp went through the back rows. That's a lie. The man in the construction vest stood up again. He never went near the cockpit. He was sent back here by her. "Sit down, sir, interfere with a federal investigation. And you're leaving in cuffs, too," Officer Vance shouted, pointing a finger at the construction worker. The man sat down, muttering angrily, but he kept his phone raised, recording everything. Vance turned his attention to Marcus. He didn't see a scared 17-year-old boy. He saw the description Karen had given him a threat. "Son, grab your bag and step forward. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "Officer, please," Marcus stammered, his voice trembling. "I have a ticket. It's on my phone." She wouldn't let me sit in my seat. "I'm first class, seat 2F. "My name is Marcus Sterling. I don't care who you are," Vance said, stepping into Marcus's personal space. The officer smelled of stale coffee and aggression. "The captain wants you off this plane. The flight attendant says you're a danger. That means you go. Now, are we going to do this the easy way or the hard way? I just want to call my mum," Marcus said, tears finally spilling over. "Please let me call my mum." "He's reaching for something," Karen shrieked suddenly. Marcus had only moved his hand toward his pocket to retrieve his phone, but that was enough. Vance lunged. He grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and spun him around, slamming him hard against the lavatory door. The sound of the impact thud silenced the entire cabin. "Stop resisting!" Vance yelled, though Marcus was limp, too shocked to fight back. "I'm not resisting," Marcus cried out, as his arm was wrenched painfully behind his back. The cold steel of handcuffs clicked tight around his wrists, pinching the skin. "You have no right to do this," a woman in row 30 screamed. "He's just a kid. Everyone stay in your seats," Officer Miller shouted, trying to control the crowd, though he looked terrified. Vance shoved Marcus forward, grabbing him by the back of the neck like a common criminal. "Move. Head down." They began the long walk of shame up the aisle. Marcus stumbled, his shoelace coming untied, but Vance yanked him upright. Every face he passed was a blur of judgment. Some people looked sad, others looked frightened, but many, influenced by Karen's performance, looked angry at him for delaying their flight. Karen followed closely behind the officers, carrying Marcus's backpack. She held it with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. As they passed through business class, She caught the eye of the man in the Italian suit, Mr. Henderson. He raised his champagne glass to her in a silent toast. "Good riddance," he muttered loud enough for Marcus to hear. Karen beamed. She felt powerful. She had cleaned up the flight. She had asserted her authority. She had won. They reached the front of the plane. The door was still open. "Get him off the jet bridge and into the holding cell at the terminal," Vance instructed Miller. "I'll stay here and get the statement from the flight attendant." "Wait," Karen said, checking her watch. "We're already 20 minutes late. Can't I give the statement in London?" "We need to close the doors." Vance nodded. "Fine. We'll take him in. You file the report when you land. We'll hold him until his parents, if he has any, come get him. Or until he's processed for the no-fly list." "Processed?" "No-fly list." Marcus felt his future crumbling. His mother's company relied on travel. If he was banned... "Please," Marcus whispered, his head hanging low. "Check the manifest. Just check seat 2F. "Shut up," Vance growled. They were 3 feet from the exit door, 3 feet from Marcus being dragged off the plane and into the system. Then movement on the jet bridge stopped them. A flight dispatcher in a neon yellow vest came running down the tunnel, breathless. "Hold the door. Hold the door, VIP arrival." "She's here." Vance paused, annoyed. "We're trying to remove a prisoner here. You have to wait." The dispatcher panted, stepping aside. "She's boarding now. Private transfer. Highest priority." Karen sighed, rolling her eyes. "Great. More delays." "Who is it this time?" "Some pop star." The sound of heels clicking purposefully on the metal floor of the jet bridge echoed into the cabin. It wasn't the saunter of a pop star. It was the rapid, forceful stride of a woman on a mission. A woman appeared in the doorway. She was in her late 40s, dressed in a cream-colored cashmere power suit that screamed old money. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon. She held a Birkin bag in one hand and a phone in the other. She looked stressed, tired, and eager. It was Eleanor Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global, and she was looking down at her phone, typing furiously. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said to the room at large, her voice commanding, yet polite. "My connection from Brussels was held up on the tarmac. I hope I haven't caused too much." She stopped. She looked up. She was standing face to face with Officer Vance, and right next to Vance, head bowed hands, cuffed behind his back, was a boy in a grey hoodie. Eleanor dropped her phone. It hit the floor with a crack. The silence that followed was heavier than the one in the economy cabin. It was the silence of a bomb about to detonate. For a split second, nobody moved. Karen Holloway, ever the opportunist, stepped forward, plastering her smile back on. She didn't recognize Eleanor instantly. She had only seen pictures of the CEO in company newsletters, usually grainy ones. She just saw a wealthy woman who needed to be charmed. "Welcome aboard, Ma'am Karen," said her voice, dripping with artificial honey. "So sorry for this unsightly scene. We are just removing a security threat, so you can have a safe and pleasant flight. If you'll just step to the side, we'll get this thug out of your way and show you to your seat. I believe you are in 1A. Eleanor didn't look at Karen. She didn't look at the officer. Her eyes were locked on the boy. "Marcus," she whispered. The word came out strangled, barely audible. Marcus lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face streaked with tears. When he saw her, his composure finally shattered completely. "Mum," he choked out. The word rang through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. "Mum." Officer Vance froze. His grip on Marcus's neck loosened slightly. He looked from the boy black hoodie sneakers to the woman white cashmere diamonds. He did the math in his head, and the numbers weren't adding up for him. Karen, however, actually laughed. A short, incredulous bark of laughter. "Oh, please," Karen scoffed, shaking her head. "That is the oldest trick in the book. Mom, ignore him. These delinquents will say anything to get sympathy. He's not your son. He's a ticketless stowaway we found hiding in the toilets. Eleanor's head snapped toward Karen. The expression on her face changed. The worry evaporated, replaced by a cold, terrifying fury. It was the face she wore when she was about to dismantle a hostile takeover in the boardroom. She stepped forward. She didn't step aside. She stepped into the plane, blocking the officer's exit. "Take your hands off him," Eleanor said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a frequency that made the hairs on the back of Officer Miller's neck stand up. "Ma'am, this is a police matter," Vance said, puffing out his chest, trying to regain control. "Step aside," I said, Eleanor repeated, enunciating every syllable. "Take your hands off my son." She looked at the name tag on the officer's chest. "Officer Vance? And you?" She turned her gaze to Karen Holloway. Karen blinked. "How do you know my name?" "Because Eleanor said," bending down to pick up her cracked phone. She tapped the screen, ignoring the spiderweb fracture, and brought up a photo. She turned the screen towards them. It was a photo taken 6 months ago. Eleanor and Marcus, standing on a pier in Santa Monica, arms around each other, smiling. Marcus was wearing the exact same vintage t-shirt he had on under his hoodie right now. Because Eleanor continued, her voice rising, "I am Eleanor Sterling. I am the CEO of Sterling Global, and I bought this boy's ticket myself. Seat 2F. First class." The color drained from Karen's face so fast it looked like she had passed out standing up. The champagne bottle she was holding slipped from her sweating palm and shattered on the floor, splashing expensive vintage fizz onto Mr. Henderson's Italian leather shoes. "Mr. Watervate." Henderson, who had been watching with amusement, suddenly looked very interested in the safety card in the seat pocket in front of him. Officer Vance looked at the photo. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Eleanor. He realized with a sinking feeling in his gut that he had just made a career-ending mistake. "Uncuff him," Eleanor commanded. It wasn't a request. Vance fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. "Ma'am, we were told. The flight attendant said he was aggressive." "Uncuff him!" Eleanor screamed, her composure finally cracking under the weight of her motherly rage. The cuffs clicked open. Marcus slumped forward, rubbing his wrists. Eleanor was there instantly, wrapping her arms around him, pulling him into the cashmere that smelled of her perfume and safety. She buried her face in his neck. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered into his ear. "I'm so sorry. I'm here." Marcus hugged her back, burying his face in her shoulder to hide his tears from the staring passengers. After a long moment, Eleanor pulled back. She inspected his wrists. They were red and chafed. She looked at his face. He looked exhausted and humiliated. She turned around. She was no longer just a mother. She was the CEO, and she was looking for blood. "Who called the police?" Eleanor asked, her voice deadly calm. The cabin was silent. Even the engine seemed to quiet down. Officer Vance, trying to salvage his own skin, pointed immediately at Karen. She did. "Ms. Holloway, she reported a level 3 threat, violent passenger, refusal to comply." Eleanor turned her gaze on Karen. Karen was trembling. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. She cleared her throat. "Miss Sterling, honestly, there was a misunderstanding. He didn't look like, the hoodie." "The hoodie," Eleanor repeated. She walked slowly toward Karen, stepping over the broken glass and champagne. "You had my son arrested. Because of a hoodie, he didn't show me a ticket." Karen lied, desperate. "He refused to show a ticket. I showed it to you 3 times. Marcus said softly from behind his mother. His voice was steady now. "You wouldn't look at it. You said I didn't fit the profile." Eleanor froze. the profile Eleanor asked, tilting her head. I didn't say that, Karen stammered, backing up until she hit the bulkhead wall. She did, a voice shouted from the back. The man in the construction vest had made his way to the front of the economy curtain. She said he didn't fit the profile of someone who pays, and she called him trash. She called him a thug, to us. Officer Miller piped up, throwing Karen under the bus to save his pension. She said he was a drug dealer. Eleanor looked at Karen with an expression of absolute disgust. "Do you know who owns the contract for the fuel that powers this plane?" Miss Halloway, Eleanor asked. "You do," Karen whispered. "Do you know who owns the logistics company that supplies the catering you just dropped on the floor? You do. And do you know who is currently in the process of reviewing the partnership agreement with this airline? An agreement that keeps this airline solvent." Karen started to cry. Ugly, terrified tears. "Please, I've been here 20 years. I have a pension. I made a mistake." "A mistake is spilling coffee," Eleanor said coldly. "Racially profiling a child, humiliating him, denying him the service I paid for, and then having him assaulted by police. That is not a mistake. That is a choice." Eleanor turned to the cockpit. The pilot, Captain Miller, had finally emerged, drawn by the shouting. He looked confused. Captain Eleanor said, "I want this woman off this plane, immediately." "Now, Ms. Sterling," the captain said, trying to mediate, "Karen is our lead flight attendant. If we remove her, we'll be down a crew member. We might have to cancel the flight due to FAA regulations on crew-to-passenger ratios." Eleanor smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Captain, I don't think you understand. If she stays on this plane, I pull every Sterling Global contract by the time we land in London. I will bankrupt this airline before we even hit the gate. Do you want to explain to the board of directors why their stock tanked 40% tomorrow morning? Or do you want to find a replacement flight attendant?" The captain paled. He looked at Karen. "Get your bags, Karen," the captain said. The realization hit Karen like a physical blow. She wasn't just losing her job. She was being humiliated in front of the very people she had tried to impress. She looked at Mr. Henderson in seat 2A, the man who had cheered her on. He was now studiously reading a magazine, refusing to make eye contact. "Captain, you can't do this!" Karen shrieked, her facade of professionalism gone. "I am the union rep. You can't kick me off for doing my job." He was suspicious. "Look at him." She pointed at Marcus again. Even now she couldn't help herself. "Get off." Eleanor stepped closer, her nose inches from Karen's. "And don't think this ends here. You're going to wish you had just scanned his ticket." Karen grabbed her purse from the galley. She was sobbing now, a mix of rage and fear. As she walked down the jet bridge, passing the confused gate agents, the passengers in the economy section, who could hear everything, started to applaud. It started with the construction worker, then the woman in row 30, and soon the entire back of the plane was cheering. "Bye, Karen," someone shouted. Karen disappeared into the terminal, a broken woman. But the drama wasn't over. Eleanor turned to Officer Vance. The big man looked small now. "And you," Eleanor said, "you assaulted a minor without cause. You took the word of a biased accuser without checking evidence. My legal team is going to have a field day with the Port Authority." "I was doing my job, ma'am," Vance muttered, but he was already backing away. "We'll see what the Internal Affairs Review says," Eleanor replied. "Get off my plane." The officers retreated, looking like scolded schoolboys. The cabin was quiet again. The air conditioning hummed. Eleanor took a deep breath and smoothed her cashmere jacket. She turned to the captain. "Do you have a reserve crew member?" "We have a deadheading attendant in business class," the captain said quickly, eager to please. "He can fill in. We'll be ready to go in 10 minutes. "Good." Eleanor turned to Marcus. She reached up and fixed his hoodie, brushing a piece of lint off his shoulder. "Are you okay to fly, sweetie? If you want to get off, we can take the private jet. It'll take a few hours to prep, but I don't mind." Marcus looked at the empty seat in 2F. Then he looked at seat 2A where Mr. Henderson was sitting. Marcus realized something. If he left, these people won. If he left, Mr. Henderson got to relax. "No, Mom," Marcus said, straightening his back. "I want to go to London. I want my cookie." Eleanor smiled, a genuine warm smile this time. "Okay, let's sit." She guided him to seat 2F, but as Marcus moved to sit down, Eleanor stopped at row 2. She looked down at Mr. Henderson. The man in the Italian suit looked up nervously. "Ms. Sterling, big fan of your work. Terrible what happened here. Just terrible." Eleanor stared at him. She didn't blink. "I heard you," she said. "Excuse me, I heard you," Eleanor repeated. "When I walked in, you said good riddance. You toasted to my son being arrested. I was talking about the delay," Henderson lied, sweat beading on his forehead. And earlier Marcus added his voice, calm. He told the flight attendant to get the riffraff out. He yelled at me to get to the back. Eleanor nodded slowly. She looked at the captain, who was still hovering nearby. Captain Eleanor said, "I don't feel safe flying with this passenger. He exhibits aggressive behavior and encourages harassment of minors. I believe that violates the passenger code of conduct." Mr. Henderson's jaw dropped. "Now wait a minute. I paid $4,000 for this seat, and I own the company that keeps this airline flying," Eleanor said. "Captain, it's him or me. And if I leave, the fuel contracts leave with me." The captain didn't hesitate for a second. He looked at Henderson. "Sir, grab your bag. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am?" Henderson sputtered, standing up his face, beet red. "I know who you aren't," Eleanor said, coolly, sitting down in seat 1A and crossing her legs. "You aren't on this flight." Henderson was escorted off the plane by the very same Officer Vance, who was waiting on the jet bridge, happy to have someone else to arrest, to vent his frustration. As Henderson was dragged off, cursing and shouting, Marcus settled into seat 2F. The new flight attendant, a young man named David, hurried over. "Mr. Sterling, can I get you anything?" "Water, juice." "Anything at all." Marcus looked at the lie-flat seat, the screen, and his mum sitting across the aisle, winking at him. "I'll take a warm cookie," Marcus said, "and maybe some orange juice." The plane doors closed. The engines roared to life. Marcus thought it was over. He thought that justice had been served. But he was wrong. The video the construction worker had recorded was already uploading to Twitter. By the time they landed in London, the world would know the name Karen Holloway. And the real storm was just beginning. End of part 4. Would you like me to proceed with the final segment, parts 5, 6, and 7? This covers the viral fallout, the legal battle, and the final "Where are they now?" conclusion. While Flight 882 cruised smoothly at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, a completely different kind of turbulence was erupting on the ground. Marcus and Eleanor were enjoying the quiet luxury of the cabin. For the first time in hours, Marcus felt his heart rate return to normal. He was currently eating a medium-rare steak served on fine china, watching a movie, while his mother worked on her laptop next to him. "Mum," Marcus said, pausing his movie, "you didn't have to kick that guy off. Mr. Henderson. He was just a jerk." Eleanor closed her laptop and turned to her son. Her eyes were soft, but there was steel behind them. "Marcus, listening to evil and saying nothing is the same as doing evil. That man felt comfortable humiliating you, because that woman in the uniform gave him permission. If I let him stay, I give him permission too. And I will never ever give permission for someone to treat you like less than you are." She reached across the aisle and squeezed his hand. Besides, he was annoying. I did the whole plane a favor. Marcus laughed, finally relaxing. But down on Earth, the favor was being returned. The construction worker in row 38, whose name was Joe, had managed to connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi. It was slow, but it was enough to upload a 2-minute video to Twitter X and TikTok. The caption read, "Delta, or airline name flight attendant, tries to arrest innocent black teen in first class. Turns out his mum owns the airline. Watch the instant karma. The algorithm picked it up instantly. Hour 1, 10 Suzudoros views. Hour 2, 500 Leozenzoros views. Hour 3, Asha, boycott the airline is trending #1 in the United States. The video was damning. It showed everything. Karen screaming Officer Vance, shoving Marcus against the door, the crowd shouting that he was innocent, and then the chef's kiss moment, Eleanor Sterling walking in like an avenging angel and revealing her identity. The internet went wild. Justice Warrior. The way her face dropped when she realized who the mum was absolute gold. A travel guy. I've flown with that Karen Holloway before. She was rude to my elderly mother. Glad she finally got what she deserved. Stockwatcher. Update: the airline's stock just dipped 4% in after-hours trading. Eleanor Sterling does not play. By the time the sun began to rise over the Atlantic, the airline's PR team was in a full-blown panic mode. Their phones were ringing off the hook. CNN, Fox News, and the BBC were all requesting statements. Karen Holloway, meanwhile, was sitting in a plastic chair in the terminal at JFK, waiting for her union representative to arrive. She had been stripped of her badge and escorted out of the secure area. She checked her phone, expecting maybe a few texts from friends asking what happened. Instead, she had hundreds of notifications. She opened Facebook. Her inbox was flooded with hate mail. Someone had found her profile. Racist. You should be in jail. Hope you enjoyed your last flight. She clicked on a link someone sent her. It was the video. She watched herself screaming at Marcus. She watched herself lying to the police. For the first time, she saw herself not as the hero of her own story, but as the villain. She looked unhinged. She looked cruel. This is illegal. She muttered, her hands shaking. They can't film me without my permission. She looked up as her union rep, a tired-looking man named Gary, walked up. He didn't look happy. Gary. Karen stood up. Thank God, you have to sue them. They filmed me, and the captain fired me without a hearing. That's a violation of Article 4. Gary sighed and sat down, not making eye contact. Karen, sit down. I want my job back. Gary, I have seniority. Karen, have you seen the news? Gary asked quietly. I don't care about the news. The CEO of the airline just issued a statement, Gary said, reading from his tablet. They are launching an immediate internal investigation. But frankly, Karen, I've just watched the video. You lied to the police. You falsified a federal report. That's not a union issue. That's a felony. Karen's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying the union can't protect you on this one, Gary said, standing back up. We represent employees who make mistakes. We don't represent liabilities who tank the company's stock. You're on your own. He walked away, leaving her alone in the arrivals hall as passers-by began to recognize her from the video on their phones, pointing and whispering. When Flight 882 landed at Heathrow, it didn't pull into a normal gate. It was directed to a remote stand. Why are we parking out here? Marcus asked, looking out the window at the grey London sky. Security, Eleanor said simply. Look. She pointed to the tarmac. A black Range Rover with tinted windows was waiting right next to the stairs. But behind the fence, hundreds of yards away, a wall of paparazzi lenses glinted. The story got out, Eleanor sighed. I was hoping we could keep it quiet, but Joe in row 38 had other ideas. They walked down the stairs. The cool English air felt good after the stuffy cabin. As they got into the car, Marcus checked his phone for the first time. He had 50,000 new Instagram followers. "Mum," he said, eyes wide, "I'm famous." "For the wrong reasons, sweetie," Eleanor said, buckling up. "But we're going to use it for the right ones." The next 48 hours were a blur of legal meetings. Eleanor didn't just want Karen fired. She wanted to ensure the system that allowed Karen to act that way was dismantled. She called a meeting with the airline's board of directors. She didn't go to their office. She made them come to her hotel suite at the Savoy. They sat on the sofas, looking like nervous schoolboys, 6 wealthy white men in expensive suits. "Gentlemen," Eleanor said, pouring herself tea, "I assume you've seen the footage." "It's regrettable," the chairman said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Truly regrettable. Ms. Holloway has been terminated effective immediately, and we are prepared to offer Marcus a settlement, $500,000, and a public apology." Marcus, sitting in the corner, playing on his Switch, looked up. $500,000, Eleanor didn't even blink. She set her teacup down with a sharp clink. "You think this is about money?" she asked softly. "I have more money in my couch cushions than your airline made last quarter. This isn't about a payout. This is about policy." She slid a folder across the table. "These are my terms. 1, you will implement mandatory third-party bias training for every single crew member. 2, you will change the protocol that allows flight attendants to remove passengers without a second opinion from the captain or a ground supervisor. 3, you will donate $2 million to the NACP Legal Defense Fund in Marcus's name." The chairman sputtered. "$2 million, Eleanor, that's—" "And 4, Eleanor interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "You will press charges against Karen Holloway for filing a false police report. You will not let her resign quietly. You will make an example of her." "If we do that, the union will riot," one of the directors argued. "If you don't," Eleanor said, leaning back, "I cancel the fuel contract, and I tweet that I'm doing it because your airline supports racists." The room went dead silent. They knew she would do it. "Fine," the chairman whispered. "We accept." Back in New York, the hammer fell. Officer Vance was suspended, pending an investigation. The video clearly showed him using excessive force on a compliant minor. He would eventually be fired and lose his pension. But for Karen, it was worse. She was sitting in her apartment blinds, drawn, watching the news. Her face was everywhere. Viral flight attendant fired Karen Holloway, charged with filing false report. Her phone rang. It was her landlord. "Ms. Holloway." "Yes." "I've been getting complaints from the neighbors. People are banging on the building's front door, leaving signs. It's a disturbance. And I saw the news about your job. Since you're no longer employed, I'm going to need to ask for next 6 months' rent up front, or I'll have to start eviction proceedings." "You can't do that," Karen screamed. "Read your lease," the landlord said. "Clause 12. Conduct detrimental to the property. Goodbye, Ms. Holloway." She threw the phone across the room. She had lost her job. She was losing her home, and she was about to face criminal charges, all because she didn't like a hoodie. Karma is a slow burn, but when it hits, it burns hot. 1 year later, Marcus Sterling walked across the stage at his high school graduation. He wasn't just a student. He was the founder of the Right to Fly Foundation, a non-profit funded by the settlement money from the airline. The organization helped provide legal counsel to travelers who had been profiled or mistreated by airline staff. He looked out into the crowd and saw Eleanor beaming, holding a camera, looking like the proudest mum on earth. Marcus was heading to Stanford in the fall. He was happy. He was confident. The incident hadn't broken him. It had built him. But what about Karen? The charges had stuck. She avoided jail time by taking a plea deal, but she now had a criminal record for filing a false report. That, combined with her status as the Internet's most hated flight attendant, made her unemployable in any customer-facing role. No airline would touch her, no hotel, no retail store. She had lost her pension. She had lost her apartment. The scene cuts to a rainy Tuesday in New Jersey. A beat-up sedan pulled into the drive-thru of a fast-food burger joint. The driver, a young black woman dressed in a nurse's uniform, spoke into the speaker. "Yeah, can I get a number 4? No pickles." "One number 4. No pickles," a voice crackled back. It was a tired, raspy voice. A voice that had once commanded a first-class cabin. Inside the greasy kitchen, Karen Holloway adjusted her visor. She hated the smell of fryer grease. It clung to her hair, her skin, her clothes. "That'll be $8.50 at the window," Karen said into the headset. She walked to the window to take the payment. She looked old. The stress of the last year had aged her 10 years. Her blonde hair was grey at the roots. The car pulled up. The young woman handed over her card. Karen swiped it. As she handed it back, the woman in the car paused. She looked at Karen's name tag, then at her face. "Wait," the woman said. Weren't you that flight attendant? The one who kicked the kid off the plane?" Karen froze. She felt the familiar heat rising in her cheeks. She wanted to snap. She wanted to say, "Mind your business." But she couldn't. She needed this job. It was the only one she could get. "Here is your receipt, ma'am," Karen whispered, keeping her head down. "Wow," the woman said, shaking her head as she took the bag of food. "Life comes at you fast, huh?" The woman drove away. Karen stood there, watching the taillights fade in the rain. Behind her, the manager, a 19-year-old kid, shouted, "Karen Free's a burning, move it." "Yes, sir," Karen said. She turned back to the fryer, the heat blasting her in the face. She thought about the champagne. She thought about the power she used to feel. She thought about the boy in the hoodie. She realized finally that she was exactly where she belonged. The story of Marcus and Karen isn't just about a flight. It's about the power of dignity and the weight of consequences. Karen thought her uniform gave her the right to judge, but she learned that true power doesn't come from a badge, it comes from character. Eleanor Sterling used her privilege to protect her son, but Marcus used his experience to protect others. In the end, the riffraff ended up at Stanford, and the elite ended up at the Friar. What an incredible dose of karma. It just goes to show you never know who you are talking to, so it pays to be kind. What would you have done if you were in Marcus's shoes? Would you have accepted the apology? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.